What's going on, everybody? We finally made it to week one of the regular season. Thank God. Today, pretty straightforward. Going to preview the Steelers Falcons game. Atlanta enters this one as a 3.5 point home favorite, kind of as expected. Should be a really good matchup, though, to dissect from a lot of different angles. I personally picked the Falcons to win the NFC South, so I think this is a pretty good opening barometer of how the Steelers team stacks up against pretty good competition. Also, we made it to 8,000 subscribers. That was our goal. For that, I am so appreciative. Thank you guys so much. This time last year, we were just over 4,000 subs. So for those of you that are new to the channel, I'll be doing these kind of previews each and every week. We'll talk through some scheme stuff, dig into the numbers a little bit, talk specific matchups to keep an eye on, and then I'll just give you guys kind of like little nuggets that I come across kind of in my film study of the opponents and things I'm looking for. So let's go. I'm ready to roll here. If you could just make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff's greatly appreciated on my end. Usually what I'll do is I'll go over the team's injury report first, just to give you guys kind of an indicator on who's playing, who's in, who's out, questionable, all that stuff. Falcons come in this thing basically completely healthy. I mean, they got some guys on IR, but nobody too significant. Kyle Pitts dealing with a hamstring injury, but it seems like he's going to be good to go in this one. Steelers, on the other hand, not so much. Roman Wilson, Isaac Seumalo, Logan Lee, all out. None of those really surprising. Roman's still working his way back from that high ankle sprain. He's yet to fully practice. I think we could probably assume at this point it's going to be a pretty slow integration period for him regardless, just because he's missed so much time. Isaac Seumalo, he's going to be out probably a couple of weeks, I would assume. Spencer Anderson's going to end up getting the start at left guard, so that's going to be interesting. One thing to note is that Troy Fautanu is healthy. I don't think he's going to start. I think it's going to be Dan Moore at left tackle, Broderick Jones at right tackle. I'm sure that you guys are going to be absolutely thrilled with that. I can already see the comments now. But that's basically what I've heard was the lineup at practice. I think that that's probably going to be the lineup when they roll out there on Sunday. I could be wrong, but we'll see. But also another really important thing is Darnell Washington popped up on the injury report earlier this week with a knee issue, but he was I think full participant maybe later in the week, and then he's going to play. So that's huge, especially for a team that's going to use all this 12 and 13 personnel. I actually think that the ways that they were using Darnell in the preseason kind of important, especially as the offensive line is still yet to fully come together and gel. Just some things he could do at pass protection, I think, is really helpful. So I'm glad that he's going to be able to go. What was a twist out of all this stuff, though? Russell Wilson re-aggravated his calf, putting his status kind of in question. Sounds like he's more of like a game time decision. I think they're listing him as questionable. NFL Network's already reporting that it's likely going to be Justin Fields. I don't really know. But let's talk about this quarterback thing just really quick. I think if Russ, kind of like what we talked about a couple weeks ago after the game, was like, I think if Russ is limited from a mobility standpoint, you have to play Justin. It's that simple to me. I don't even think there's really much to discuss beyond that. And what I mean by that is, like, if he can't do the bootleg stuff, if he can't create those second reaction plays out of the pocket, if there's anything limiting his mobility, there's just no point in playing him in my eyes. I mean, you look back at, like, a calf can be a pretty serious thing from a quarterback. Those soft tissue injuries are really tricky. Already a re-aggravation there. Kind of saw that thing with like Joe Burrow last year in Cincinnati. He entered the season with a calf, and you kind of saw some of the ways that it hamstrung his play, but also hamstrung the offense in different ways. And you just can't do it, unfortunately. So it sucks for us. Hopefully, he gets healthy really quickly. We can't have a quick discussion about the quarterback thing. I think I ruffled some feathers last night with a tweet, but I just think that Justin's had so many opportunities to showcase himself this summer. He got all of training camp with the ones, tons of reps in the preseason. I honestly think he left quite a few chances out there on the table, to be honest with you. I didn't think he played particularly well against the Bills in his most extended action. Kind of talked about that already. Certainly not well enough to, I think, definitively overtake Russ out of that pole position, even with him missing so much time. So it looks like we're going to get to see him again. He's going to get another chance here sooner rather than later. So we'll see what it looks like. I'm excited about it. Like I've said all offseason, I'm cautiously optimistic that one of these two guys is going to be able to provide some competent quarterback play, which is more than we can probably say in recent years. But at the same time, I don't really necessarily care who it is. I just want to win, man. I want to watch decent offense. I think it's a lot more fun, but it's a lot more easy for me to create content. And I think it, gives the Steelers obviously a better chance to win. So I want all of those things. I know the hypothetical questions are already flowing everywhere on the Twitter sphere, and things about like what happens if Justin plays really well? Like, can you go back to Russ? Yada yada yada. It's just got to happen first. Like, I mean, these same hypothetical questions were going on over the past couple of months. Was like, what happens if Fields just looks great in training camp? What happens if he blows the doors off in the preseason? Those things didn't necessarily come to fruition. So I'm going to worry about those things when they happen. Hopefully Justin goes out there and balls out, and then we could talk about it in the post game. But until then, I'm just not going to spend too much time worrying about it. Like what would need to happen and all this different stuff. It's not all that important to me personally. But let's talk about the Falcons, man. Raheem Morris, new head coach. Steelers saw this defense last year when he was the defensive coordinator for the Rams. Week one's always different, right? Because you don't have any data on these teams yet. But we can, fortunately, look back on like kind of that Steelers-Rams matchup from last year because all of this coaching staff is from that staff. They moved the ball a little bit on offense last year. They had like a 50% success rate on offense. That's very good. Run game was super efficient, like 56% success rate. George Pickens went over 100 yards receiving. Deontay Johnson did some good things on the perimeter too. So, his staff over there is Zach Robinson, Sean McVay disciple. A lot of those running amok around the league these days. But kind of that offense, heavy reliance on 11 personnel in the preseason, which is drastically different than what Arthur Smith obviously ran in Atlanta last season, but pretty per the course for what LA was last year. If you look at the Rams offensive numbers, they used motion on 70% of their snaps last year, third highest in the NFL. So all that means is like communication of the utmost importance for a Steelers defense. They have a lot of returning guys, a lot of experience on that side of the ball. I don't anticipate that being an issue. But one thing I will note, and this is kind of like some of the nuggets that I'll provide in these type of previews, but when the Steelers saw this offense last year, they had a lot of issues when the Rams ran the football out of the shotgun and the pistol. Specifically split flow inside zone. I went back and watched that game earlier this week. The Rams had 12 carries, 77 yards on those runs. So I think they'll be more play action heavy this year with Kirk Cousins at the quarterback as opposed to Matthew Stafford. But just some things to watch there for sure. And then defensive coordinator Jimmy Lake, before his kind of 1 year stint with the Rams, he coached at Washington, has a defensive background. I'm assuming that this defense is going to look pretty similar to what we saw in LA last year too. Lots of too high. They're going to play with a light box, both at some of the highest usage in the league. They're a 3-4 defense. Do some 4-down nickel stuff. Do some penny front stuff too, which is kind of interesting with one linebackers. From a coverage perspective, lots of weak rotated cover 3 out of that Fangio system. And then you get a high usage of quarters and cover 6 as well. They didn't run very much man coverage at all. So one thing to watch for this is like, you're probably going to see a lot of like what I call targeted coverages towards George Pickens. A lot of like cover 2 to his side, a lot of jamming him at the line of scrimmage, getting 2 sets of eyes on him. How the Steelers adjust to that, we will see. Of course, it's always that kind of dynamic, right? Like Arthur Smith's offense, the different personnel packages and way that he likes to play typically means he sees a lot of cover 3. So we'll see if that like what the Falcons end up wanting to do there. Just some notes that I have just on like some of their kind of key figures in this game that I kind of wanted to talk about. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is one of the reasons that I think a lot of people are optimistic about this team. I think that this roster is good enough to win their division, but he's 36 years old. He's coming off a torn Achilles. Lots of things to like about Cousins' game. He will throw over the middle with anticipation. He will test linebackers. He'll hit those high lows. Few players I feel like are more like offensive line friendly than Kirk Cousins, which kind of sounds funny because I think a lot of people associate him with being like a statue, but he does an excellent job like setting the depth of the pocket. He just consistently doesn't drift in the pocket. He doesn't allow like any less than advantageous corners for edge rushers. Like, he's just a difficult dude to get to. And he's also become more comfortable, I think, over the course of his career, like playing with pressure in his face. I feel like that's kind of been one of the areas of improvement for him in the last couple of years. He's not the most aggressive quarterback. He's not super creative, like out of structure. So like, that's kind of what I think kind of holds him back into that good or solid category and not necessarily great for the longest time, but we'll be interested to see. I think Raheem Morris said that like he wasn't going to sit there and like let TJ Watt wreck the game. I do think that one thing that Arthur Smith did with this offense and this offensive line, which we can talk about, was kind of limited their exposures in drop back passing situations. So a lot of play action. He did some things I think to hide some of the stuff, particularly with like Caleb McGarry, their right tackle, in pass pro. So I'm curious on what that's going to look like. I think, when you think about a 36-year-old quarterback that's coming off of that significant of an injury, I don't think that they're going to necessarily want to drop back and pass 40 times. But we will see if they want to do that. That's perfectly fine with me. But just talking about their offensive line, Drew Dahlman's their center. He's an absolute freak show at the pivot. Like one of my favorite players that I've studied all offseason. I obviously watched far too much of this Falcons offense just from the last 3 years, creating content for you guys, just getting like myself up to speed on what this scheme's going to look like. But he's great in space, excellent zone, outside zone player. He is a little bit undersized, so I'm curious on how that looks like with Keanu Benton. Granted, when Benton gets the chance to rush from a 3-tech perspective, or excuse me, 0-tech perspective, but he's just got crazy movement skills. And like his partner to the right, Chris Lindstrom, one of the best offensive linemen in the game, excellent on double teams. And McGarry, he's also a really good run blocker at right tackle, but I just think that he has some range issues that I think that TJ could potentially exploit. When I went back and watched some of the pressures and sacks that he gave up last year, Brian Burns was able to get him off the edge with speed. Basically, like most of the losses that I was seeing on tape were basically speed related. And I think, that kind of bodes well when you've got one of the best players in the entire world who's primarily a speed rusher, number 90, TJ Watt. So Jake Matthews on the other side is steady, but I would expect that Alex Highsmith at least has some form of success against him as well, especially if they end up having to drop back and pass a ton. So just some of the other guys I want to talk about: Drake London, big bodied wide receiver, can win vertically. He's not like the speediest guy from a straight line perspective, but he's excellent on end breakers, digs, slants. He can win on like curls and comebacks and things like that. Contested catch player, very good with the ball in the air. He high points the ball extremely well, has great body control, kind of a similar tierish player to George Pickens, I would say. They have some similarities in their game. I think Pickens is a little bit better, probably in the minority on that one, but I think he is. But he's a really good player. There are other like complementary pieces on offense. Kyle Pitts, excellent seam stretcher, really good athlete. I don't think he was particularly healthy last year. We'll see what that looks like. How the Steelers defend him, I think, is also going to be interesting. The Rams were so 11 personnel heavy last year because of their talent at their disposal. But I'm not sure if this Atlanta team necessarily has the receiver talent to be so 11 personnel. So maybe they do more 12, more multi-tight end stuff. But like Deshaun Elliott's going to probably play a part in trying to shut him down. I'm sure we'll see Minka on him from time to time as well. Other receiver, kind of a speed on speed matchup. We got Darnell Mooney, a vertical threat guy, really good on double moves. So keep an eye on that, because I know Dante Jackson, another speed guy, but double moves have sometimes gotten him in a little bit of trouble. But I think that Dante could definitely hold his own in that matchup. And then I think Porter is probably going to shadow Drake London, if I would guess. That's probably what I would do too, is shadow him a little bit more. So Bijan, I think everybody kind of knows about him. Really popular player from the fantasy football community. But the one thing that stands out about Bijan, man, is like he can do a little bit of everything. Like he can run routes, but I think that the thing that makes him like great is his ability to seamlessly like string moves together. He can make these insane cuts and make guys look pretty silly in the open field. So you really got to get your hands on him and rally to the ball. So he's going to be, they're going to try to run the ball, I'm sure, a lot. I'm just curious on how much of it is like some of the zone stuff that McVay ran early in his career, or if like they lean into more of the duo stuff that, the Rams were doing last year under this coaching staff. So just like on the defensive side of the ball, some of the guys that I kind of want to talk about a little bit: Grady Jarrett. Like it's going to be a huge test for Spencer Anderson, right? And Zach Frazier. You got like basically two rookies. Anderson really didn't play last year. You got Zach Frazier at the pivot going up against Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett's like numbers like really, really tailed off over the past couple of years. And I was like, when preparing for this game, I was like, I wonder just like what he looked like last year, because I didn't really hear much about him, just different things. You look at the numbers, they're pretty underwhelming. He missed about half the season with an injury. And then I went back and looked at the tape, and like I went to watch the Lions game. Lions have a very good offensive line. They have an excellent center in Frank Radnow, and Grady Jarrett just took the game over. Like you just don't see their offensive line get wrecked like that. He's really twitchy. He's got active hands, a hot motor. So he's going to be a force, man. Next to David Amiata, And then they also like made a couple interesting acquisitions recently too. Like they went out, they got Jesse Bates. Bates is one of the best like center fielders like in the game. Full stop. He's excellent with his eyes on the quarterback, whether it's Russ or whether it's Justin, whoever. Gonna have to make sure they know where number three is at all times. Like just because like some of the breaks he makes on the ball, like he has uncanny ball skills. He sees the game so well from depth, and he's been one of those guys that's consistently flipped the course of games. Of course, we're real familiar with him from his days playing in the AFC North, Cincinnati, but they just recently acquired a couple guys, Justin Simmons, another guy. I think they're going to play a lot of two high, so it'll be a lot of like playing from the table from him. But Simmons is another guy who historically has taken the ball away at a really high rate. So taking care of the football this weekend is going to be of the utmost importance. It's definitely one of the keys to the game, in my opinion. But Matthew Judon's their other guy. I mean, the pass rush to me is still like not up to par. I mean, we'll see. Jarrett's recovering from a pretty serious injury. He's over 30 years old. I still think that he's probably got some left in the tank. Judon is kind of like one of those like high end number two, low end number one edge rushers for me personally. One thing I love about Judon is like he understands how to like set his moves up, excellent footwork. He's always around the play because he never runs himself out of the play. And what I mean by that is like he just has such good awareness of like he always has his eyes on the quarterback, never runs himself up the arc too much. Like he just understands how to rush the passer. Just a very smart player. He's really good with the inside move, and like that's one of the things too with like Broderick. I feel like over the course of last season, he gave up some really ugly losses, like early in the rep to inside counters. We'll see. That's going to be something to watch as it pertains to this defense. I'm not too keen on the Falcons inside linebackers. I know Ellis is a pretty good pass rusher. Troy Anderson's always been more of a project to me. That's like more athletic tools than actual like production or actual like real linebacker play. But we'll see. I mean, those are both guys that clearly they're pretty high on because they're the starters. So, I think like I said, it's a pretty good roster. I don't know what the ceiling is for this Falcons team, but I do think that they're going to be like in the mix for a playoff hunt, kind of in a similar ish tier to where I have the Steelers. Just some of the things I'm watching for personally, just the play of this young offensive line. Obviously, it's going to be the story of the season for me, like how effective they are running the football, how quickly these guys can gel. It's just of the utmost importance, man. And it kind of sucks that we're not getting to see Isaac Seumalo. Probably won't get to see Troy Fautanu. So we don't have like the full product, but how a guy like Zach Frazier plays in his first career start against by far the best competition that he's probably ever faced. What does Broderick Jones look like? How healthy does he look like first and foremost? But also like how does he hold up against the Falcons edge rushers? The edge rushers outside of Judon, not really super scary. So like not the biggest test in the world, but like Judon is a guy that I think could potentially give Jones some issues just because like he's been around a long time and he's faced a lot of tackles that have poor technique. So I'm sure that he's going to have a way that he wants to rush 77, but we'll see. I mean, like I'm mainly just concerned about how healthy Broderick looks more than anything. I'm assuming it's going to be Justin under center. Like I said, I'm excited about seeing like the quarterback run game. I want to see Art do more than just like the zone read stuff. There is just so much meat on that bone, and I really want him to really lean into getting creative. We didn't see a ton of it in the preseason. I think that was smart because, like, why would you show your cars in the preseason? Doesn't matter. But you've had since March when you acquired this dude for this specific moment. Like, it's time to like roll it all out there. I want to see some creative stuff. And then just in dropback situations, I'm interested to see the different ways that they try to get the ball to George Pickens, and then the newly rich man, Pat Fryermuth, 88. So just on defense, I have a couple questions. The biggest question for me is, beside what I talked about earlier, just like how they handle like the run game stuff, because I think that was a little bit of an issue against like this offense last year. But how do the Steelers handle these nickel packages? I would expect to see Drake London moved around more in this offense than in years past, but I still think that Joey Porter Jr. is going to follow him. That'll be a good individual test, but like, what's the division of labor in the slot? Are we going to see Deshaun Elliott? Are they going to play big nickel? Are they going to play? Is Minka going to be down there? Mike Tomlin earlier this week was not overly complimentary of like Beanie Bishop. Didn't seem like he had a ton of confidence in him. So I know you guys watched the Steelers defensive preview. I said that like the one thing that I think could really hurt this defense and be sort of an issue is like their lack of investment at that nickel spot. We'll see. I don't know. I need to see it for me to feel a lot better about it because it still has me extremely uneasy. I'm excited about seeing Keanu Benton play this year. One of my bold predictions for Steelers now was that he got 6 sacks, 6 or more sacks this year. I'm really interested to see in his usage specifically in like sub packages. Is he playing in the nickel? Like, I think he needs more rush opportunities than even a guy like Larry Ogunjobi, way more than he got last year, just on third down specifically. And then, like, how does he match up with a guy like if he gets matched up with Lindstrom? That's kind of like a good on good matchup. And then I think like Dahlman's he's a really good player. I really like it watching his film. He's a functional pass blocker, but he is small. So like I wonder like how, maybe if they try to go a little bit of power, like not just with him, but like do they try to line Cam Hayward up over him from time to time in passing situations to see if like he can drive the pocket back into Cousins' lap, knowing kind of knowing the depth that Cousins likes to kind of play at in there. So, but anyways, I really appreciate you guys watching to the end. Let me know what you guys think of the format. Like I said, it'll be this kind of format all season long, but like as I get more data, like we'll go through a little bit more numbers, and we'll have storylines that we'll talk about in these things from time to time, and it'll just be better, easier for me too to like talk about these teams once we've actually seen them on the field, not just like opposing teams, but also the Steelers. Like I'll kind of know what needs to be talked about, at least in my opinion. I try to offer like a unique perspective to give you guys a different perspective than one you'll hear like on, before the game on Sunday. So, but as always, I really appreciate you guys watching. I just want everybody to drop me their score predictions in the comments on this one. So there may be a small giveaway for someone in the comments that gets the score right. I will let you guys know about that in the post game. But please enjoy this glorious weekend of football. Also, do not forget about the channel membership availability. I posted a Cam Ward Miami quarterback film room for all you guys that are already prepping for the NFL draft. He had a huge game last week, 385 touchdowns, 385 passing yards, 3 touchdowns in the swamp against the Florida Gators. Really impressive performance, but there's a lot of content over there. There is some Justin Fields film room stuff over there in the channel membership section. So if you guys are looking for something else to watch beyond this video before the game kicks off on Sunday, there's more stuff over there. So, but you guys enjoy your weekend. Go Steelers. I will check in with you guys immediately after the game. Peace and love, baby.